I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I congratulate you and your friendly country on your successful presidency over the Council for this month. We are meeting today at a time when our region is experiencing conflagration, which will have spillovers on the world at large, not just on the region. This is the result of the continued committal by the Israeli occupation entity of genocide against the Palestinian people in Gaza Strip and its persistence in attacking countries of the region, including my country, Syria, the rest of which was its malice attack on Majd al-Shams in the Syrian-occupied Golan on 27 July 2024. My delegation reiterates the content of its two identical letters addressed from the government of the Syrian Arab Republic to the Secretary General and the President of the Security Council on August 14. The letters state the categorical rejection of Syria of the falsehoods presented by the representative of Israel during the emergency session on the situation in the Middle East, including the Palestinian question, on August 13. Syria reiterates its condemnation in the strongest terms the fact that the representative of Israel, as part of his show business and all-out tricks and his attempts to distort facts, he raised pictures of Syrian children who were murdered on the Israeli attack on Majd al-Shams in Al-Julan and claimed they were Israeli children. Syria reiterates that our people in Al-Julan are Arab Syrians. They have always been and they will always remain part of the Syrian people. They uphold their national belonging to Syria and their national identity. They reject the Israeli occupation and look forward to ending it and ending its practices against them. Syria reiterates its legitimate right to restore the Syrian-occupied Golan. It is an established right that is not subject to bargaining, negotiation, pressure, or statute of limitation. It is a right ensured by international law and relevant UN resolutions, in particular Resolution 497 of 1981. What exacerbates the risks in the region is the fact that some Western countries, on top of which the US, that claims its upholding of human rights, are amassing its fleets and armies to support the criminal Israeli occupation entity, to persist in its crimes, massacres, and attacks, that's instead of playing its role as a permanent member in the Security Council, which should ultimately enhance on promoting the role of the Council in maintaining international peace and security according to the Charter. Mr. President, the government of Syria continues to take steps to promote the humanitarian situation and provide basic services to Syrians, as well as improving the legislative and administrative infrastructure. In this connection, Legislative Decree 19 was issued. It provided, inter alia, the establishment of National Council for Persons with Disability. This council is tasked with all affairs of persons with disability, including providing them with protection, their integration in society, meeting all their needs, as well as providing them with social protection and infrastructure and ensure their participation in public and political life. The government of Syria maintains its positive approach and constructive cooperation with partners in humanitarian and development fields. It continues to provide facilitations that are needed, and it has renewed the authorization to use Al-Salam and Al-Ra'i crossings for additional 3 months. This is to ensure that aid reaches those who need it in the northwest of Syria. Mr. President, at the time when the world commemorated the World Humanitarian Day, my country, Syria, continues to suffer from the politicization and obstruction of humanitarian action by some Western countries. Those countries withhold the funding of humanitarian action and link it to political conditions to serve their interests at the expense of the security and stability and livelihood of the Syrian people. This is by adopting hostile policies that have inflicted harm on the efforts of the Syrian government and the ability of the United Nations and its specialized agencies to perform their mandate and to support the resilience of Syrians as well as support the early recovery projects in major sectors like education, health, water, electricity, and sheltering. Mr. President, 18 months ago, Syria was hit by a catastrophic earthquake. Back then, due to the absence of machinery and modern equipment as a result of the unilateral coercive measures, many Syrians had to use their bare hands to dig in search for their loved ones to rescue them from under the rubble. And today, while Syria is being hit again with new earthquakes, most recent of which was 2 weeks ago with 5.5 magnitude, yet the catastrophic situation remains. That's because some Western countries, on top of which the US, continue to move ahead with their destructive policies of collective punishment of peoples by imposing unilateral coercive measures that target all Syrians. The absence of these modern machinery and equipment is not but one of the impacts of the catastrophic impact of these measures, which target many vital sectors like the banking, financial sector, oil, energy, and aviation, and the construction and other vital sectors that have an impact on the daily life of Syrians. My delegation takes note of the positive points referenced in ESCWA's report on the impact of unilateral coercive measures on the Syrian Arab Republic. Syria sees in this report an additional evidence of the catastrophic impact of these illegal measures, and the report refutes the claims promoted by those who impose such measures. Yet my delegation stresses that the main problem is the imposition of these measures, which represent a violation of international law and not the excessive compliance or the unintentional impact of such measures. My delegation is looking forward to the SG's report on the monitoring and study of the impact of the imposition of unilateral coercive measures on affected countries in implementation of General Assembly Resolution 78/135 entitled Unilateral Economic Measures as a Means of Political and Economic Coercion against developing countries. Mr. President, Syria reiterates its commitment to a Syrian-led and owned political process without any external interference, in full respect of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria, and it reiterates its continued cooperation and dialogue with the special envoy in his capacity as facilitator. We are looking forward to the success of his efforts to convene the 9th round of the Constitutional Committee in Baghdad in Iraq. My delegation stresses that the political solution in Syria requires the end of the illegal presence of US forces which have looted the wealth of Syria and which have supported terrorism and their proxy militias, which do not hesitate from attacking the innocent civilians who defend their families, their villages and properties in Deir al-Zor, al-Hasaka and al-Kamishli. In conclusion, Mr. President, Syria reiterates that there is no legal ground for the presence or the remaining of the US forces in Syria illegally without the consent of the Syrian government. This runs counter to the established provisions of international law, the treaty and customary law. The claims and falsehoods by the US about ensuring the defeat of Daesh as a pretext and justification for the continued illegal presence are false and baseless and have no legal effect. On the contrary, such presence is in fact what obstructs the efforts of the Syrian government to fight and combat terrorism. And it obstructs the national efforts within the UN Global Counterterrorism Strategy, which stresses the national ownership of the efforts to counter terrorism. Therefore, this illegal military presence should come to an end. Finally, Mr. President, as to the false claims mouthed by the U.S. representative on the narcotics and drugs, which are business, I would like to explain the following. The war in Syria led to the increase of criminal activities by those groups and affiliated movements, of course, by the support of the U.S. government. Such organizations funded their crimes to traffic in drugs. Despite the challenges, the government of Syria spares no effort, including by cooperating with neighboring countries to address this challenge. Major progress and achievements have been made in this regard. Thank you, Mr. President.
Representative of the Syrian Arab Republic for their statement.